Sir, you said during the campaign you had concepts of a plan. Do you have an actual plan at this point for health care?
Yes, we have concepts of a plan that would be better.
Still just...
You don't want to elaborate? Can we get more than concepts?
It's a little hard to explain. Obamacare, when I took it over, was a disaster. And I made it
Has insured
workable.
20 million people.
Yeah, because of me.
Pals, I think you're really going to enjoy this video. If you do, please hit the like and subscribe button and comment button. It really helps out.
President-elect Donald Trump, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here. You are the first president since Grover Cleveland to win non-consecutive terms. Republicans now have control of the House and the Senate.
Right.
What do you plan to accomplish in your first 100 days in office?
Well, we're going to do something with the border, and very strong, very powerful. That'll be our first signal, and a first signal to America that we're not playing games. We have people coming in by the millions, as you know, and a lot of people shouldn't be here. Most of them shouldn't be here, but we have jails being emptied into our country. We have mental institutions from all over the world being emptied into our country. So we'll be doing that. We're going to be extending within that period, or as soon as we can, the Trump tax cuts, because, you know, they're coming due and they're very substantial for people. And it would be very, I think it will anger a lot of people, frankly, if we don't get an extension of that. That's what led us to one of the greatest economies ever. And those two things are going to be very vital, very important. We're going to be focusing on crime in the cities. And we'll work with Democrat governors. Most of them are, as you know, if you look at the 25 worst places, they're just about all Democrat-controlled cities and states. And we're going to be working with Democrat governors and Democrat mayors. And I look forward to doing it. But we have to do something about crime, and mostly in our cities. And we're going to have a lot of other things. We'll be working on nominations. We're going to still be working on some nominations. I think they're going very well. We have, for the most part, I think they're going extremely well. It looks like Peter's doing well now. I mean, people were a little bit concerned. He's a young guy with a tremendous track record, actually. He went to Princeton and went to Harvard. He was a good student at both, but he loves the military, and I think people are starting to see it. So we'll be working on his nomination along with a lot of others.
We are going to delve into your nominations, but since you bring him up, do you still have confidence in Pete Hegseth?
Yes, I do. I really do. He's a very smart guy. I've known him through Fox, but I've known him for a long time. And he's basically a military guy. I mean, every time I talk to him, all he wants to talk about is the military. He's a military guy. I used to kid him about it. I didn't think he would be in this position where he may be, hopefully will be Secretary of Defense. But every time I was with him, he was fighting for soldiers, where he said some soldier was unjustly.
He was fighting for Trump to pardon 2 soldiers that were convicted of war crimes. That's for sure.
Put in prison because they were really doing what they were taught to do in some cases. So, yeah, I think he's going to do fine.
The fact that there are these allegations against him, misconduct, sexual misconduct, heavy drinking, the fact that he said to some senators reportedly he'll stop drinking if he gets this job.
Yeah.
That to me was like so crazy. That's not the best pitch. Like, why wouldn't you just say, you know, starting today, no alcohol? But even then, it's not. I mean, it's just, guys, if you hire me, I promise I'll stop drinking. It's just, that seems a bit weird to me.
Does that worry you?
No, I think that everybody has something that they can stop. Some people can stop eating. I'm lucky I'm not a drinker, but I could stop eating. And we all want to stop doing something. And if he said that, I mean, it's a nice thing to say. That's a good thing to say. But he's very respected. I can tell you, I know a lot of the people at Fox, they think he's fantastic. And the people that work with him, really, they love him. So I think you're going to have somebody that's really terrific. And again, all he talked about with me, I said, you know, you're not really a television guy, even though he did very well, as you know. You're really a military guy. He said, I'm all about the military. And I told him, so he's making a lot of money at Fox. They're doing very well. And I said, you know, if for some reason you don't get...
Just as a random aside, I don't want to be a buzzkill, but I feel like the amount of people that are celebrating the guy who murdered the healthcare executive, it's like disturbing to me. it's kind of fucked up to me. I feel like it doesn't bode well for the future. I find it so disturbing. It's just so disturbing to me. You can have all kinds of justified, righteous anger towards the healthcare system in the United States, and I agree with probably most of that. But vigilante murders, if that becomes a new kind of normal, I mean, I just imagine, you know, the Unabomber, you know, has fans. You know what I mean? This guy reportedly was a fan of the Unabomber. I don't know. When I see it, I just look at that and I think like, man, this just makes me worried for the future. There's a dehumanizing going on that's I'm just so deeply uncomfortable with.
This thing, you're not going to be able to go back. And all that money you're making, you can kiss it goodbye. He said, this is all about America. You know, he didn't say, well, let me think about it. Let me discuss it.
He did leave a manifesto and they just published it. I don't know if I can read it. I don't know if I can read it on Twitch because technically is he a terrorist? I don't know if I can read it.
That's a very big risky thing he's doing. When he goes and he says, I'm going to give up, you know, millions of dollars in order to possibly become the Secretary of Defense. A lot of people would say it's a great position. It's probably almost no greater position, but a lot of people would say, I have to think about it. He said, I don't have to think about it.
All right, we're going to delve into your cabinet picks a little bit later, but I want to delve into one of your signature promises on the campaign trail, which was to end inflation, to lower prices. You are now proposing tariffs against the United States' three biggest trading partners. Economists of all stripes say that ultimately consumers pay the price of tariffs.
This is where Trump usually goes, I love the word tariff. It's my favorite word in the dictionary.
I don't believe
Can
it.
you guarantee American families won't pay more?
I can't guarantee anything. I can't guarantee tomorrow. But I can say that...
Wait, but you ran on lowering prices. First of all, how the were you going to even do that? Deflation? You ran on lowering prices, and then when she asks you, can you guarantee that the tariffs won't result in higher costs for consumers? You say, oh, I can't guarantee that. Like, really?
If you look at just pre-COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I had a lot of tariffs on a lot of different countries, but in particular China. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars, and we had no inflation. In fact, when I handed it over, they didn't have inflation for a year and a half. They went almost 2 years just based on what I had created. And then they created inflation with energy and with spending too much. So I think we will. I'm a big believer in tariffs. I think tariffs are the most beautiful word. I think they're beautiful.
He did it. He did the thing. He's so predictable, you guys.
It's going to make us rich. We're subsidizing Canada to the tune of over $100 billion a year. We're subsidizing Mexico for almost $300 billion. We shouldn't be subsidizing. Why are we subsidizing these countries? If we're going to subsidize them, let them become a state. We're subsidizing Mexico, and we're subsidizing Canada, and we're subsidizing many countries all over the world. And all I want to do is I want to have a level, fast, but fair playing field.
Sir, your previous tariffs during your first administration cost Americans some $80 billion, and now you have major companies from Walmart, Black & Decker, AutoZone saying that any tariffs are going to force them to drive up prices for their consumers. How do you make sure that these CEOs, that these companies don't, in fact, pass on the cost of tariffs to their consumers?
They cost Americans nothing. They made a great economy for us. They also solve another problem. If we were going to have problems having to do with wars and having to do with other things, tariffs, I have stopped wars with tariffs by saying, you guys want to fight, it's great, but both of you are going to pay tariffs to the United States at 100%. And
who is he talking about?
They have many purposes, tariffs, if properly used. I don't say you use them like a madman. I say properly used. But it didn't cost this country anything. It made this country money, and we never really got the chance to go all out because we had to fight COVID in the last part.
The 2018 to 2019 tariffs increased prices for both imported and domestically produced goods. The tariffs required U.S. companies to pay an additional fee to import many foreign goods. Some companies passed on these fees to consumers by raising retail prices. Domestic producers responded by raising the prices of their own goods, which became artificially more competitive. The U.S. International Trade Commission found that in 2021, the tariffs increased prices between 1.7 and 7.1% in the 10 most affected sectors. These include apparel, car parts, furniture, and computer equipment.
And we did it very successfully. And when
the Biden administration has kept or increased the majority of Trump's tariffs, particularly on China, citing continued unfair trading practices. President-elect Trump, has proposed a 10% tariff on all U.S. imports and a 60% tariff on Chinese goods. The Yale Budget Lab estimates consumer prices would rise by 1.4 to 5.1%, with a cost per household of $1,900 to $7,600. These are for the new universal tariffs that Trump is proposing.
Handed it over to Biden, the stock market was higher than what it was just previous to COVID coming in. It was actually higher. Tariffs.
What did he just say?
Handed it over, and we never really got the chance to go all out because we had to fight COVID in the last part, and we did it very successfully. And when I handed it over to Biden, the stock market was higher than what it was just previous to COVID coming in. It was actually higher. Tariffs are properly used, are a very powerful tool, not only economically, but also for getting other things outside of economics.
Well, again, prices did go up on some goods in your first administration, washing machines, tires. Will you punish CEOs?
Let me just explain to you. No. You mentioned washing machines. So you look at Whirlpool in Ohio. I got a call from Jim Jordan, one of the greats, congressman from Ohio, and he said, they're going out of business because South Korea and China are dumping washing machines into our country. And I put a 50% tariff on the washing machines coming in from China and South Korea. And Whirlpool and the companies that made washing machines, which are based in Ohio, largely based in Ohio, went through the roof. We saved thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs. They were all going out of business because they were dumping washing machines. And when I put the tariffs on, they became successful businesses. No, it didn't. Not only didn't it cost people, it made our country stronger and more powerful, and it kept jobs.
But how do you make sure that consumers don't wind up paying more? Will you punish CEOs who try to pass the cost of tariffs on to their customers?
Well, the market's going to take care of it. I mean, actually, the market.
In 2017, appliance giant Whirlpool asked for help curbing imports of washing machines by its Korean rivals LG and Samsung. In early 2018, Trump imposed tariffs ranging from 20 to 50% on most imported washing machines. Trump imposed many other tariffs, but they mostly affected industrial products and components that went into other finished goods, making it harder to isolate the effects of tariffs. Washing machines were one of the few consumer goods subject to new import duties. The tariffs were supposed to lapse in 2021, but shortly before leaving office, Trump extended them for another 2 years. During the time the tariffs were in effect, February 2018 to February 2023, the cost of laundry equipment rose by 34%, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's in conjunction with the inflation that occurred. Overall inflation was just 21% during the same time frame. The price of appliances overall rose by 23%. So laundry equipment rose by at least 11% more than it probably would have otherwise without the tariffs.
It takes care of it. And if it doesn't, we adjust it somewhat. But in the case of Whirlpool, or let's say companies that made washing machines, they were all being put out of business by the dumping from, in particular, South Korea and China. And when I put the tariffs on, very substantial tariffs, although peanuts compared to what people do to us, what countries do to us, it became a very, very powerful, successful company. Now, let's say I didn't do the tariffs. It would have gone out of business. You would have lost tens of thousands of jobs, and you don't include that in your equation. No, they make a lot of money. I'll go a step further. Tariffs are going to make our country rich. Tariffs are going to help us pay off $35 trillion in debt. Tariffs are going to make our country safe, because China, as an example, doesn't want to play games with us if we're going to do tariffs on them. They don't want to play games. And we have a lot of games being played on us right now.
Well, I think, and that takes me to my next question. Yeah. Are you actually going to impose these tariffs, or are they a negotiating tactic?
Well, I'll give you an example. With Canada, and in particular Mexico, We have millions of people pouring into our country. You agree with that? I spoke with I spoke with Justin Trudeau. In fact, he flew to Mar-a-Lago within about 15 seconds after the call ended. Yeah. He was at Mar-a-Lago. We were having dinner talking about it. I said, you have to close up your borders because they're coming in the northern border, too, a lot. Not like the southern border, but they're coming in the Canadian border a lot. And drugs are pouring in. Almost as importantly, drugs are pouring in, maybe more importantly, drugs are pouring in at levels never seen before, 10 times what we had.
From Canada?
They're just pouring in. We can't have open borders. And I said to the president of Mexico and to Justin Trudeau, if it doesn't stop, I'm going to put tariffs on your country.
The U.S.-Canada border is the longest international border between two countries in the world. Recent news reports, along with data compiled over the past 2 years, show a surge in illegal migrant crossings and drug trafficking across the northern border. Canada, what are you doing?
At about 25%. That's a very substantial tariff. And in the case of, in both cases, but in the case where it was really visible, within 10 minutes after that phone,
Canada, am I right?
That the people coming across the border, the southern border, having to do with Mexico, they were at a trickle, just a trickle. It was, in fact, I call the border. See, unlike my opponent, I do call the border a lot. And I said, how's the border looking today? They said, there's nobody here. They couldn't believe it. The military stopped these vast groups of people. You know, we call them caravans. But they had caravans of people, and they largely stopped them. Now, they're going to have to continue that. But if they don't continue, and the other thing I told them is no more drugs. And I told that to China, too. I had to deal with President Xi, had the election.
So he did have, I think, a phone call with the Mexican president. And then after the phone call, he claimed that, great news, the Mexican president agreed to shut down all immigration from the southern border. And then she came out with a statement saying, I didn't say that.
Been different. I'm going to be very nice.
She claimed that the caravans very rarely ever reach the southern border to begin with.
Because we don't have to get into an argument over 2020.
And that they were already taking steps to address the caravans on her end before they had even spoke on the phone. But this idea that the Mexican president said that she agreed to stop immigration altogether from Mexico, she immediately came out with a statement and was like, I did not say that.
But had the election been different, the result been different, we would have had China giving the maximum penalty, which is the penalty of death, to people that sent fentanyl into this country. But Biden didn't, unfortunately, finish that discussion up. I had an agreement with President Xi, who I got along with very well. We've had communication as recently as this week. And I had communication with him where they were going to give the death penalty to anybody sending drugs into the United States.
This week you had that conversation.
Not that conversation, but I had other conversations. Okay. But in the past, I've had that conversation.
Let me ask you about another aspect of the economy, sir, the minimum wage. The federal minimum wage has been $7.25 since 2009. There are 20 states that still have the federal minimum wage at $7.25. And I actually have a map. 19 of these states actually voted for you, sir. Mm-hmm. And you can see it right here. I don't know if you remember this, but during the debate in 2020, I asked you if you would raise the minimum wage. You said you would consider it. And so my question for you is, now that you are going back to the White House, for these 19 states that voted for you, are you going to raise the federal minimum wage? It's a very low
number. I will agree. It's a very low number. Let me give you the downside, though. Yeah. In California, they raised it up to a very high number. And your restaurants are going out of business all over the place.
That's not true. That's not true. The restaurant industry in California is growing. It's not going out of business. He's just making this up completely.
The population is shrinking. It's had a very negative impact. But there is a level at which you could do it, absolutely. Yeah.
What is that level, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I can say this. You have a lot of businesses that are open and thriving because of the lower minimum wage. If you raise it too much, and you understand this, if
California population was shrinking, but we saw a net increase in 2023 of 67,000 residents, which stopped a 3-year trend of population decline.
California went crazy. They went crazy. And people, the restaurants are closing all over. Many more people are hurt.
So I hear you saying similarly to sort of what you said in 2020, will you consider it? Is this something you're going to look at?
I'd want to speak to the governors. And the other thing that's very complicated about minimum wages is places are so different. Mississippi and Alabama and great places are very different than New York or California. I mean, in terms of the cost of living and other things.
The good news is that very few Americans are actually paid minimum wage. Percentage of American workers make minimum wage. It's very low. 1.3%. 1.3% were paid at or below the official minimum wage.
So it would be nice to have just a minimum wage for the whole country, but it wouldn't work because you have places where it's very inexpensive to live, where a minimum wage, which is $8 or $9, might have very little effect because the cost of living in certain places is really low.
Before we move on to immigration, which I do want to talk about, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, said he will not leave his post even if you ask him to. Will you try to replace Jerome Powell?
No, I don't think so. I don't see it. But I think if I told him to,
he doesn't have the power to replace the Fed chair. There's a really funny clip of Jerome Powell just very plainly saying no.
Some of the president-elect's advisors have suggested that you should resign. If he asked you to leave, would you go?
No.
Can you follow up on, do you think that legally you're not required to leave?
No.
Do you believe the president has the power to fire or demote you, and has the Fed determined the legality of a president demoting at will any of the other governors with leadership positions?
Not permitted under the law.
Very alpha Chad reaction.
he would. But if I asked him to, he probably wouldn't. But if I told him to, he would.
You don't have plans to do that right now?
No, I don't.
Okay, let's talk about mass deportation, one of your big agenda items. You've talked about prioritizing people who have criminal histories.
Correct.
But is it your plan to deport everyone who is here illegally over the next 4 years?
Well, I think you have to do it. And it's a very tough thing to do. But you have to have, you have rules, regulations, laws. They came in illegally. The people that have been treated very unfairly are the people that have been online for 10 years to come into the country. And we're going to make it very easy for people to come in terms of they have to pass the test. They have to be able to tell you what the Statue of Liberty is. They have to tell you a little bit about our country. They have to love our country. They can't come out of prisons. We don't want people that are in for murder.
People that become naturalized do have to take like a really basic civics test.
So we had 11,000 and 13,000 different estimates, 13,099 murderers released into our country over the last 3 years. They're walking down the streets.
Mind you, I'm not even sure a majority of Americans could pass that test. To be honest with you, I really don't know.
Walking next to you and your family, and they're very dangerous.
The 13,000 figure, I think, goes back about 40 years.
No, it doesn't. No.
He's wrong. Yes, it does.
Murder. So we had 11,000 and 13,000 different estimates, 13,099 murderers released into our country over the last 3 years.
This is bullshit, complete bullshit. The data was misinterpreted at first. There was a clarifying statement that I think DHS made, and they did indeed confirm that the amount of violent criminals that were allowed back into our system was across 40 years, including when Trump was in office. And Republicans keep repeating this claim that the Biden administration released 13,000 violent criminals into the country. That's just not what the data showed. It's just complete bullshit.
Walking down the streets, they're walking next to you and your family, and they're very dangerous.
The 13,000 figure, I think, goes back about 40 years.
Yes.
No, it doesn't. No,
Yes.
It's within the 3-year
13,000
period. It's during
Nope.
the Biden term. No, that was a fiction that they put that out. This was done by the Border Patrol. It's 13.
Why would she not push back right here? That's frustrating. Why would she not assert? No, they issued a statement. They clarified.
1,099, and it's during the Biden period of time. And these are murderers, many of whom murdered more than one person. You don't want those people in this country.
But you're saying something, sir, that's significant. I just want to make sure I'm clear, which is that you're saying, yes, you're going to focus on the people with criminal histories, but everyone who's here illegally has to go.
I'm
is what
saying
you're
this.
saying.
We have to get the criminals out of our country. We have to get people that were taken out of mental institutions and put them back into their mental institution, no matter what country it is. Do you know that Venezuela, their prisons are...
The theory here is that Trump is confusing like people applying for asylum with people that were released from criminal asylums. I've heard that theory floated before. I feel like maybe there's some truth to that. I really don't know.
At the lowest point in terms of emptiness that they've ever been. They're taking their people out of those prisons by the thousands, and they're drunk. And just to get back, because I know exactly what you're getting at.
Because what he's saying, there's nothing to substantiate the claim that Central and South American countries and Mexico are emptying their insane asylums and sending them up to the... There's no evidence of this at all. He just... So maybe in his mind, he hears asylum so much, and so he just thinks like insane asylum. And I don't know. I think that's an interesting theory.
Number one, we're doing criminals, and we're going to do them really rapidly. We're getting the worst gang probably with MS-13, and the Venezuelan gangs are the worst in the world. They're vicious, violent people. And you see what they've done in Colorado and other places. They're taking over, literally taking over apartment complexes and doing it with impunity. They don't care. They couldn't. They just are. They're in the real estate business.
You know, the local police say that is not the case in Colorado.
Oh, it's totally the case. I mean, I have it on
you don't
tape.
believe the local police.
I play it. I used to play it at my rallies every single night. No, they're breaking into doors. They're taking over the building.
But sir, you
and by the
raised
way, the
point,
police are afraid to do anything.
You raised the point that the logistics are complicated. You said
Sure
it yourself.
they are, but everything's complicated.
Yeah, you mean you need 24 times more ICE detention capacity just to deport 1 million people per year, not to mention more agents, more judges, more planes. Is it realistic to deport everyone who's
You have
here
no
illegally?
choice. First of all, they're costing us a fortune. But we're starting with the criminals, and we got to do it. And then we're starting with others, and we're going to see how it goes.
Who are the others?
Others are other people outside of criminals. We have convicted murders. We don't mean people that are even on trial. We have people that have murdered numerous people are on our streets and in our farms, and we have to get them out of our country.
What is he talking about here? Who give me someone who was convicted of multiple murders that was allowed back into that was here illegally? Like, what is he referring to here?
What about dreamers, sir? Dreamers who were brought to this country illegally as children. You said once back in 2017, they, quote, shouldn't be very worried about being deported. Should they be worried now?
The dreamers are going to come later, and we have to do something about the dreamers.
He's going to deport dreamers? That's what he's implying here.
These are people that have been brought here at a very young age, and many of these are middle-aged people now. They don't even speak the language of their country. And yes, we're going to do something about the dreamers.
What does that mean?
And
What are you
What the f does that mean? What are you going to do about them?
going to do?
I will work with the Democrats on a plan, and if we can come up with a plan, but the Democrats have made it.
There's already a plan. It's called DACA, Deferred Action Against Childhood Arrivals, and it gives them a certain amount of protections. Like, what do you mean? You want to deport dreamers?
It's very, very difficult to do anything. Republicans are very open to the dreamers. The dreamers...
If memory serves correctly, I think he tried to end DACA and was told by the courts that he couldn't do it. I think he tried to end DACA and the court stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. I could be wrong about that.
We're talking many years ago they were brought into this country. Many years ago. Some of them are no longer young people. And in many cases, they become successful. They have great jobs. In some cases, they have small businesses. Some cases, they might have large businesses. And we're going to have to do something with them. And
like
You
what?
want them to be able to stay. That's what you're saying?
I do.
Okay.
I want to be able to work something out. And it
Okay, so just don't touch DACA. Problem solved. What now? I believe what he tried to do the first time around was use DACA recipients as a bargaining chip. So he tried to get rid of DACA and then pressure the Democrats into giving him border wall funding the first time around. But ultimately, I believe he was unsuccessful in ending DACA. And so there went that whole situation.
should have been able to.
I think what he's saying here is he's going to try to do the same thing. Try to eliminate DACA protections and then turn to Democrats and say, okay, well, if you want these DACA protections, you got to do this, that, or the other thing.
Be worked out over the last 3 or 4 years, and it never got worked out. You know, Biden could have done it because he controlled, Congress to a certain extent, right? He could have done something, but they didn't do it. I never understood why, because they always seem to want to do it, but then when it comes down to it, they don't. I think we can work with the Democrats and work something out.
Let me ask you about another group of people, the estimated 4 million families in America who have mixed immigration status. So I'm talking about parents who might be here illegally, but the kids are here legally. Your borders are.
You're talking about separation.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are two aspects to this. Your borders are, Tom Homan said, they can be deported together.
Correct.
Is that the plan?
Well, that way you keep well, I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together, and you have to send them all back.
Even
You can't deport people that are citizens or that are here legally. They're not subject to deportation. I don't even know what this means, to deport people, to deport families together.
kids who are here.
If you have a dad that's here illegally and then kids that are citizens, you can't deport the citizens. That's just not. Listen, far be it from me to try to predict anything. Maybe he'll try to do that, but he's going to have a hard time deporting citizens.
legally?
Well, what you're going to do if they want to stay with the father? Look, we have to have rules and regulations. You can always find something out like, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. I'll tell you what's going to be horrible. When we take a wonderful young woman who's with a criminal and they show the woman, and she could stay by the law, but they show the woman being taken out, or they want her out, and your cameras are focused on her as she's crying, as she's being taken out of our country, and then the public turns against us. But we have to do our job, and you have to have a series of standards and a series of laws. And in the end, look, our country is a mess. We have the highest crime rate, and during the debate, a man whose ratings have gone way down, David Muir, said to me, no, crime is, because I had to debate 3 people, not one. Debating 1 was easy. Debating 3 was actually pretty easy, too, if you want to know the truth. But David Muir said, the crime rates have gone down. I said, no, they've gone up. And then the following day, they released the crime rates, and they were way up.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. The FBI did revise some of its statistics, but even with the revisions, crime trended down on Biden's watch.
FBI statistics are. You're talking about those FBI statistics.
Well, no, but
which
he gave the wrong answer. The
confusing
crime rates
based
have
on what
gone-
you're looking at.
But a lot of that is migrant crime.
Let me ask you about another
But
aspect
Kristen,
of this.
you know a lot of it's migrant crime.
Well, let me ask you about another aspect of this that I think a lot of people are really curious about. I mean, 3% of the people who are here illegally have criminal histories. But in your first administration, you had the zero tolerance policy, where we did see family separations.
Yeah.
You ended it. The purpose of that, though, to some extent, and you talked
By the
about
way,
this at the time, was deterrent.
you also had it with Obama. You do know that.
He didn't have a zero tolerance policy.
And you also know he built the jails for children.
He didn't have a zero tolerance policy.
But in 2014, he built the jails. You know that.
I want to ask you about the zero.
They built detention facilities. I mean, I feel like they build detention facilities on every president's watch, but yeah, Obama never had a policy of family separation. Republicans keep trying to do, a lot of lefties repeat this lie as well. It's just not true. Obama didn't have a zero tolerance policy. He didn't have a family separation policy. It didn't happen, never happened. It's a lie.
Zero tolerance policy. I mean, he didn't have a systemic, we're going to separate families. Families were separated when parents were a threat to the kids.
We don't have to separate a family.
This.
Excuse me, Kristen.
Yeah.
We don't have to separate families. We'll send the whole family very humanely back to the country where they came. That way the family's not separated.
So
That was the policy before family separation policy. Like if 2 parents showed up and they had a kid or whatever, and they were denied entry, it was deemed that they didn't have a valid asylum claim, they would be removed from the border. They would be sent back to their country of origin together with their child. Under his administration, they briefly pursued this other policy of separating kids from families.
no more family separations. You're not reviving
Well, it
the
depends
zero
on the
tolerance
family. The
policy.
family may decide to say, I'd rather have dad go, and we'll stay here.
I think he's lost in this conversation. I don't think he's following this conversation.
And in which case they have that option.
But you're not going to revive your zero tolerance policy, which was put in place as a deterrent. Is there any universe where you would bring that back, sir?
We need deterrence. Look, ready?
Why doesn't he answer any of these questions, bro? Like, this is just, are we witnessing cognitive decline? I feel like he can't follow this conversation.
When somebody comes here illegally, they're going out. It's very simple. When they come here illegally, they're going out. Now, if they come here illegally, but their family is here legally, then the family has a choice.
He literally answered the question, what are you missing, Hutch? She's asking about the family separation policy, and he's talking about deporting family. He's still talking about like what Homan said, which was like, will just, they can go with the person who's being deported. So he's talking about a separate issue. He's not it's not registering. Listen to him.
Tolerance policy, which was put in place as a deterrent. Is there any
She's asking about the specific policy that they implemented in 2017 and 18.
universe where you would bring that back, sir?
We need deterrence. Look.
So he's not answering that question about family separation here.
Ready? When somebody comes here illegally, they're going out. It's very simple. When they come here illegally, they're going out. Now, if they come here illegally, but their family is here legally, then the family has a choice.
This has nothing to do with the family separation policy. Do you understand? He's not answering the question.
Person that came in.
That's answering the question. No, it's not. It's not answering the question. You're not getting it. If somebody tries to come here illegally, and there are family that are living in the United States legally or whatever, that has nothing to do with the family separation policy. It's a separate thing.
And illegally can go out, or they can all go out together. And that was made very clear by Tom Homan.
So you're not, at this point in time, planning to revive that zero tolerance policy where kids are
Well, if you call
separated.
that, yeah, I'm doing what I just told you I'm going to do. I don't want to send the family out. I don't want to send anybody.
I literally don't think he's following this conversation. Truthfully, that's my interpretation. I don't think he's following what she's asking.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, we have to, because otherwise we have no country. If we don't have borders, and if we don't have voting, good voting, fair voting, do you know they're still counting votes in San Diego, California? Listen, they're still counting the votes.
We're still counting votes in Tennessee, bro.
This is almost 4 weeks. They're still counting the votes. If we don't have fair elections and honest voting and machines that work quickly, if you had paper ballots, every election will be over by 10 o'clock in the evening.
So, let me ask you.
You understand what I'm saying?
Let me, before we get
and
to...
you get a much more accurate count.
Before we get to all of that, let me ask you about some of your other promises on this topic.
There are paper ballot backups for all of these machines.
Promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't do that.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
We're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only
You're going to pass a constitutional amendment getting rid of birthright citizenship? Good luck with that.
country that has it.
Through an executive action?
We're the only country that has it. Do you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to...
Countries with birthright citizenship, we are not the only country. Far from it. Canada, Mexico, Central America, most of South America, couple countries in Africa.
end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix
COVID. How are you going to get around the 14th Amendment? How are you supposed to get around that?
COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it. It's ridiculous. Do you know we're the only country in the world that has it? Do you know that? There's not one other country.
What about the legal challenge, inevitable legal challenges that'll come?
Do you know we have thousands of judges? Somebody walks onto our land, and we have to now say, welcome to the United States. They could be a criminal or not a criminal. We release them into our country. It's called catch and release. We release them into our country. Wait, just 1 second. And now they get them lawyers. And the lawyers are good lawyers. And everybody has a lawyer. And you know how many judges we have? Thousands. Thousands. Now, here's what other countries do. They come into the land and they say, I'm sorry, you have to go. And they take them out. Okay? With us, once they touch our land, we're into litigation that lasts for years.
When he says catch and release, he's talking about our asylum laws. So if someone shows up at our border or even crosses our border illegally, but then is deemed to have a valid asylum claim and is owed a court date because of our laws, they are released into the public, set up with a sponsor, and that is the program. So if you want to end that practice, you would have to completely rewrite our asylum laws. Yeah.
Cost us hundreds of billions of dollars.
His administration was doing quote unquote catch and release. It's just that is what the law is.
We have judges, and I'm sure they're all honest, but I don't know that for a fact. You can imagine what's going on with the judges. But just so you, because I have a lot of judges, I tell you what, I know more about judges than any human being in history. Look, we have judges. Every time somebody puts 2 feet or even 1 foot on a piece of our land, it's welcome to long-term litigation. Other countries, every other country, when somebody walks on and they see that they're here illegally, they walk them off, they take them back to where they came from. We have to get rid of
The people that are caught in catch and release are not here illegally. This is what I mean when I say like, and this is what I brought up in the PKA episode is like, it seems like MAGA voters don't decouple these two things. They don't make a distinction between someone who crosses the border illegally or overstays a visa and then is just in our country illegally. They don't draw a distinction between them and people with who are deemed to have valid asylum claims. They don't understand that there's a difference there, or they think there shouldn't be a difference. Yeah.
rid of this system. It's killing our country.
Let's talk about health care. I've been talking to Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill. They say it's no longer feasible to repeal and replace Obamacare because it's so entrenched in the system.
Most recent Gallup poll showed it had 55% approval, 35% disapproval. That's basically a reversal from shortly after it was passed in 2010. I think back then it was only 35% approval, massively unpopular because of the Republican propaganda machine that talked about, death panels and socialism and, skyrocketing premiums and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then Trump tried to kill the ACA in 2017. And people realized that the ACA was Obamacare. There were actually I think it was like 1/3 of the country were not aware that the ACA was the same thing as Obamacare. And once the ACA was threatened, people started to understand oh, wait, no, hang on a second. I rely on these Medicaid expansions. Or I rely on not being denied coverage for having a pre-existing condition. And then the trend reversed. And so now it's at majority approval. So most Americans I was actually wrong. I brought this up on the podcast. I said something that was incorrect. Most Americans are dissatisfied with the state of healthcare in this country. In fact, there was a recent poll that suggested, I think for the first time, it was 48% of the country think that the healthcare system should be run by the government and 45% think that it should be run by private insurance. So I think that trend is starting to change.
Do you see it that way? Is that now off the table, repealing and replacing?
When John McCain let us down by voting, and Murkowski and Collins and whoever it was that voted against, but they really let us down. They did us a great disservice because we would have had great health. Obamacare is lousy health care. It's very expensive health care for the people. It's also expensive for the country, but for the people. It's lousy health care.
The increase in premiums, so premiums go up every year. That's just a part of inflation, right? The premiums were increasing at a higher rate before the ACA was signed into law. And then after the ACA was signed into law, that rate, that year over year increase went down. But a lot of people thought that Obamacare meant that the premiums were going to go down, but that's never what was promised. Part of that is on Obama because he wasn't specific enough when he was talking about his proposed plan to overhaul healthcare. The way that he went about describing what his plan would do was kind of confusing to a lot of people. When
John McCain gave his thumbs down after saying for 10 years that he wants to repeal and replace, okay? And then he came out, put his now famous thumbs down, and he became a hero to the left. Let me tell you, if we find something better, I would love to do it. But one thing I have to say, I inherited Obamacare, or anything else you want to go. It's got about 20 names, but I inherited it. And I had a decision to make with Health and Human Services. I had a big decision to make. Do I make it as good as we can make it, or do I?
His proposed thing that they passed in the House but failed in the Senate was basically a stripped down version of the ACA that would place tens of millions of Americans in what were called high risk pools. So they would separate, healthier people would be in one pool, and then people with pre-existing conditions and other health conditions would be separated, put into a high risk pool. And those people in the high risk pool would have paid astronomically higher premiums. That was his version of what he proposed replacing the ACA with was garbage.
Let it rot. And a lot of political people said, let it rot and let it be a failure. I said, that's not the right thing to do. And I had very good people in the medical area that handled that. And I said, what do you want to do? He said, we really have an obligation to make it as good as we can. And we did. We made it as good as we can make it. Instead of making it bad where everybody would be calling for its repeal, I made it so that it works. Now,
But you
who knows what the talking about here? Because what he did was he ended the individual mandate. So there was an individual mandate in place, which meant that if you didn't have healthcare, the government could fine you. I don't know what it was, $300 or $400 or whatever. I paid some of those fines because there were many years that I wasn't insured. And that was his way of trying to kill the ACA. It didn't work. He also stripped resources from the federal government that assisted Americans in signing up in the individual markets. So another thing that the ACA did was it allowed people who were outside of some employment pool, like, you work for a company, there's 200 people at the company, and then the company offers a healthcare package, and then you're in a pool with those people. If you're a contractor or self-employed or whatever, the ACA empowered people to purchase insurance in an individual market or whatever at lower costs. I have no idea what he thinks. Like he's trying to claim right now that he saved the ACA, but what happened was he tried to repeal it via legislation. That was the first thing he tried to do. That failed, and when that failed, he tried to kill it through other means. So, we have various agencies that do outreach to Americans, help them figure out how to sign up for ACA subsidies for healthcare through the individual market. He stripped a bunch of the funding for that and basically did no outreach to get people to sign up, which brings prices down for everybody. The more people you have signed up, the prices go down. And then he challenged the individual mandate in court, I believe is what he does. And they were ultimately successful. The Supreme Court, I think, ruled that you can't do the individual mandate. And that was his way of trying to kill it. Didn't work. We're currently at 95% healthcare coverage in this country, which is the highest it's ever been, thanks to the ACA. It's an imperfect bill with a healthcare system that many people have issues with. But if this is going to be our system, then the ACA did a lot of good. It expanded healthcare access to 50 million people in the last decade and a half. It saved tens and tens and tens of thousands of lives, which is a big deal. I know people that have come into my chat and talked about it. I've said, I would not be alive were it not for the ACA. So it did a lot of good.
did try to overturn it,
It's
sir.
it's
you did
lousy.
try to overturn it. You did have your Justice Department try to direct the Supreme Court to.
No, we got a little bit of a surprising opinion, to be honest with you. If it would have been overturned, we would have had much better health care right now. But
What does that mean? If it would have been overturned, there would have been nothing to replace it. It would have just been back to the same system we had in place before the ACA. What is he even talking about? This makes no sense.
right now, we have something that I made the best of. I could have made the worst of it, and it would have fallen by the wayside. I did the right thing from a human standpoint, but I'm sort of proud of my decision.
I don't know what this means.
At the same time, sometimes I regret it. I told the people, and I gave them the money to do it. I said, fix it, make it work, because people would have suffered.
I don't know what he's talking about. You gave them the money to. I have no idea what he's talking about.
But it's too bad that they voted no. I wish John McCain, he fought for 10 years on replacing Obamacare for 10 years, and then he voted against. Nobody understands.
Yeah, because your plan was trash. It was a garbage piece of legislation.
Sir, you said during the campaign you had concepts of a plan. Do you have an actual plan at this point for health care?
Yes, we have concepts of a plan that would be better.
Still just.
You don't want to elaborate? Can we get more than concepts? Really? You don't want to get into any specifics? Of course he has no plan. I mean, we can just read between the lines here. Of course he has no plan. He knows that it's not going to be politically possible for him to end the ACA. He's just stubbornly hanging on to this because that was the first thing he tried to do. He failed. It probably really pisses him off that he failed at the very first thing that he tried to do. I mean, he started his presidency with a massive legislative failure, and I'm sure that gnaws away at him, but he knows he's not going to be able to get rid of the ACA.
Just concepts? Do you have a fully developed plan?
Let me explain. We have the biggest healthcare companies looking at it. We have doctors. We're always looking because Obamacare stinks. It's lousy. There are better answers. If we come up with a better answer, I would present that answer to Democrats and to everybody else, and I do something about it. But
such as? You don't have any kind of broad strokes for how you would reform or replace ACA? Nothing? No specifics?
until we have that, or until they can approve it, but we're not going to go through the big deal. I am the one that saved Obamacare. I will say.
Bro, I don't know what this means when he says he saved Obamacare. I don't understand what that means. He first tried to get rid of it through legislation. He second tried to get rid of it through court challenges, which ultimately failed in the Supreme Court. And he took steps to gut it as much as he could through his own executive branch. What does it mean that you saved Obamacare? You saved it from yourself? What does that mean?
And I did the right thing.
Oh, Jesus. How long
I could
has
have
this
done
been?
the more political thing and killed it. And all I had to do is starve it to death.
You did try to have your Justice Department effectively kill it, though,
No.
sir.
Kill it from a legal standpoint, but from a physical standpoint, I made it work.
In your
What does that even mean? What the does that even mean? I tried to kill it legally, but physically I saved it. What the are you talking about? It makes no sense. What a bizarre thing to say.
Your concepts of a plan, sir, will people with pre-existing conditions still have coverage, and can you guarantee their prices will not go up?
The answer is yes. They'll have coverage. You have to have it.
And what about their
because
prices?
You know what?
What about their prices, sir?
I want the prices to go down. I want to have better health care for less money. And there are ways of doing it, I believe. And I have the smartest people in that world. You know, that's a separate world unto itself. I have the smartest people in that world looking at it and trying. And if they come up with something.
The overview of, so the bill that he tried to get passed was called the American Health Care Act. It would eliminate employer and individual mandates and related penalties, substituting a one-time premium increase of 30% for persons that were without coverage previously for a specified period. It would allow that states would be allowed more flexibility in establishing essential health benefits. It changed some tax credits. Hold on, pre-existing conditions. The bill would have repealed the individual mandate and the employer mandate, dramatically cut Medicaid spending and eligibility, eliminated tax credits for healthcare costs, abolished some taxes on high earners, and altered rules concerning pre-existing conditions. What specifically did they want to do to pre-existing conditions? The American Health Care Act, which has passed the House of Representatives, contains a controversial provision that would allow states to waive community rating in the individual insurance market. In this brief, we estimate the number of people with pre-existing conditions who might be affected by such a policy. Had something to do with the gap coverage? I don't know. I'd have to spend some more time looking into this. Whatever.
Something, I will present it. Now, maybe you won't be able to sell it, but if we get better health care for less money, I believe it's very saleable.
Just very quickly, when will we see your fully developed plan? When are you going to show
I don't know
the
that you'll
public
see it at all. I can only say that we have some of the best healthcare people. I've always tinkered with it. I think it's a little hard to explain. Obamacare, when I took it over, was a disaster. And I made it
It has insured
workable.
20 million people.
Yeah, because of me.
What? There's no way he took credit for this. I thought it was 50 million people
Because
for the
of
record.
me. If you look at what I did, I was
You
the
tried
one.
to-
I made it.
You tried to kill
You
it
tried to
legally.
repeal and replace it. You
tried to
tried
kill
to
it.
kill
If I repealed
sir.
it and replaced it, we would have had a better system because we wouldn't have had health care. And the Democrats would have been forced to do something. If we wouldn't have had it, the Democrats would have been forced to do something that they wouldn't do if we have it.
Let me ask you about another aspect of healthcare. You talked about this on the
The U.S. Department of the Treasury releases new data showing nearly 50 million Americans have been covered through the Affordable Care Act.
campaign trail, IVF. You promised free IVF for all who want it, either through the government
And
or
he's taking credit for that? That's f***ing insane.
through mandates with insurance companies. I've been hearing from Republican senators, some of them, who say they're not going to support that plan. How are you going to get that passed?
Well, we're going to see. We want them to pay, ideally the insurance companies to pay for it, the fertilization. I came out very early for a Republican especially, and I think they were looking for my guidance, my great wisdom, right? They were looking for it. And I got a call from Katie Britt, who's a terrific person, senator from Alabama, and she said, sir, we just had a really negative ruling from a judge in Alabama, conservative judge, that all of these clinics had to be closed. And she said, and she went into great detail, and she said people are devastated over it. And after literally speaking to her for 5 minutes, I issued an order, really an order in a sense, and it was a statement from the Republican Party that we are all for IVF and fertilization. Okay. The Alabama legislature met the following day and passed it. It was a beautiful thing to see. And I consider myself to be the father of IVF in a certain way. And
Oh my God. What the does that even mean? He's now taking credit for all the people that have been granted healthcare coverage because of the ACA. And now he's calling himself the father of IVF. What the are we talking about?
the Republicans were very strong on the issue.
But, sir, I want to understand where it falls in your list of priorities. I mean, is this something we can expect to see you try to move on in the first 100 days?
We're going to be talking about it, and we're going to be seeing. We have a lot of other things. I have tax cuts. You know, we'll be submitting in either the first or second package to Congress the extension of the tax cuts. So that might very well be in there, or it'll come sometime after that.
Let's talk about abortion, sir. You have taken responsibility for overturning Roe v. Wade. You've said that abortion is now a state issue. There are steps that you could take, though, as president, to restrict abortion through executive action without Congress. More than half of abortions in this country are medication abortions. Will you restrict the availability of abortion pills when you're in office?
I'll probably stay with exactly what I've been saying for the last 2 years, and the answer is no.
You commit to that?
Well, I commit. I mean, do things change? I think they change. I hate to go on shows like Joe Biden.
That's not a very strong commitment.
I'm not going to give my son a pardon. I will not, under any circumstances, give him a pardon. I watched this, and I always knew he was going to give him a pardon, and so I don't like putting myself in a position like that. So things do change, but I don't think it's going to change at all.
Okay. Let's talk about some of your picks to fill out your administration. You named Kash Patel to be the next FBI director. Yeah. He has a list in his book of 60 people that he calls members of the so-called deep state. It includes Democrats like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. It includes former members of your cabinet, from Bill Barr to Christopher Wray. You campaigned on destroying the deep state. Do you want Kash Patel to launch investigations into people on that list?
No, I mean, he's going to do what he thinks is right.
Do you think that's right? Do you think that's right, sir?
If they think that somebody was dishonest or crooked or a corrupt politician, I think he probably has an obligation to do it. But
are you going to direct him to do it?
No, not at all. Not at all. We have two great people there. We have him and we have Pam. And Pam Bondi has been like a rocket ship. She's very popular and very good and very fair. And Kash Patel is very fair. I'll tell you, I thought Kash may be difficult because he's, you know, a strong conservative voice. And I don't know of anybody that's not singing his praises. The other day I was...
He's talking about Pam Bondi, who he nominated to be Attorney General. I believe she was the Attorney General of Florida.
Watching, and Trey Gowdy.
She closed an investigation into Trump University shortly after Trump gave her $25,000 campaign contribution. Look it up. I'm being serious.
Who's a moderate person and very smart and very respected in the party. He's Kash's biggest fan. He said, this is the most misunderstood man in politics. He's great. I guess they worked together on the Russia hoax or something. And Trey Gowdy became a fan. You know Trey Gowdy. Everybody respects him. And, you know, just like him, others also. I don't know of one negative vote. I don't think he's going to have any negative votes.
Is it your expectation, though, that Kash Patel will pursue investigations against your political enemies?
No, I don't think so.
Do you want to see that happen?
If they were crooked, if they did something wrong, if they have broken the law, probably. They went after me, you know. They went after me and I did nothing wrong.
Well, let me ask you this. You said President Biden... quote, that you're going to appoint a real special prosecutor to go after Joe Biden. You said that during the campaign.
Where?
You said that on Truth Social, June 12th, 2023. I will appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States, Joe Biden, and the entire Biden crime family. Are you going to do that? Are you going to go after Joe Biden?
I'm really looking to make our country successful. I'm not looking to go back into the past. I'm looking to make our country successful. Retribution will be through success. If we can make this country successful, that would be my greatest, that would be such a great achievement. Bring it back. We have a country now that's overridden with crime, that has millions of people that shouldn't be here, that should be in prisons in other countries, that should be in mental institutions. We have drug lords being dropped into our country and told never go back to their country. I'm looking to make our country great. I'm looking to bring prices down because, you know, I won on two things, the border and more than immigration. You know, they like to say immigration. I break it down more to the border, but I won on the border and I won on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, you know, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries. When you buy apples, when you buy bacon, when you buy eggs, they would double and triple the price over a short period of time. And I won an election based on that. We're going to bring those prices way down.
I want to pause here because what you're saying is...
How are you going to bring the price of groceries down? What's your plan for that? What are your concepts of a plan for that?
Significant, because you wrote on Truth Social in 2023 that you're going to appoint a real special prosecutor to go after Joe Biden. Now you're saying you're not going to do that.
I will say this. No, I'm not doing that unless I find something that I think is reasonable. But that's not going to be my decision. That's going to be Pam Bondi's decision and, to a different extent, Kash Patel. Assuming they're both there, and I think they're both going to get approved. But you know, while you ask me that, what they've done to me with weaponization is a disgrace.
We'll get to some of that,
No,
sir.
wait. You can't do one without the other. In the history of our country, nothing like this has ever happened. And I've won these cases. I've won every one, and the rest are in the process of being won.
He had one, I don't even know what that means. There was one case that was thrown out. That was the Florida documents case, because the judge presiding over that case took a cue from Clarence Thomas, who included in an opinion a rationale to like deem all special counsels unconstitutional. And so she threw the case out on that basis. Many people expected that that was going to be overturned on appeal because it's just so insane. He lost this case in Manhattan. The case in Georgia was ongoing. The case in DC was ongoing. I don't know what he means when he says he beats all the cases. So it doesn't make any sense.
Deranged Jack Smith is on his way back to The Hague, where he can execute people. This is where he should have stayed. I think he's dangerous even being there. But I'll tell you what they've done to me in terms of weaponization, indictments, impeachments, and everything else. And in the end, it probably helped me because I got the biggest vote, the most votes any Republican's ever gotten in history.
Pam Bondi talks about investigating the investigators. Do you want her to investigate Jack Smith?
I want her to do what she wants to do.
Do you want to see Jack Smith investigated?
Well, I think he's very corrupt, but I want her to do whatever she has to do.
Are you going to direct her to prosecute Jack Smith?
She's a very smart person. She was a great attorney general in Florida. She's very experienced. I want her to do what she wants to do. I'm not going to instruct her to do it, no.
Sir, are you going to fire the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, who you appointed?
Well, I can't say I'm thrilled with him. He invaded my home. I'm suing the country over it. He invaded Mar-a-Lago. I'm very unhappy with the things he's done. And crime is at an all-time high. Migrants are...
It's not even close.
Pouring into the country that are from prisons and from mental institutions, as we've discussed. I can't say I'm thrilled. I don't want to be Joe Biden and give you an answer and then do the exact opposite.
We're going to talk about
so
that.
I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to say is I certainly cannot be happy with him. You take a look at what's happened. And then when I was shot in the ear, he said, "Oh, maybe it was shrapnel." Where's the shrapnel coming from? Is it coming from heaven? I don't think so. So we need somebody to straighten. You know, I have a lot of respect for the FBI, but the FBI's respect has gone way down over the last number of years.
Don't you have to fire him in order to make room for Kash Patel if he is, in fact, confirmed?
Well, I mean, it would sort of seem pretty obvious that if Kash gets in, he's going to be taking somebody's place, right? And somebody is the man that you're talking about.
Okay, let's talk about...
So that would be two FBI directors that he's fired because they were investigating Trump or Trump's campaign. And he's firing the second one who he appointed. Obama appointed Comey. He fired Comey because Comey, the FBI, was investigating the Trump campaign with the ties to Russia. And now he's going to fire Christopher Wray because Wray signed off on a raid on Mar-a-Lago after Trump was found to be lying about classified documents that he still had in his possession.
Project 2025. This is the conservative policy blueprint. You disavowed it during the campaign. You called it a product.
He just gives no fucks about that norm. Like the reason why, we're supposed to have 10-year terms is to avoid political influence in the DOJ. And that just, doesn't matter, I guess.
Of the radical right. You've said some of their ideas were abysmal.
I said some of it is. Some
Okay.
of it is very good. Some of it's very mainstream, actually. Frankly, the Democrats should have used some of it because they went, with all the transgender that they were doing or with the men playing in women's sports. Well, if they wouldn't have done that, maybe they would have done better.
Well, so you take me to my question. You're now giving people involved in Project 2025 prominent roles in your administration. Are you changing your mind about Project 2025? No. Is this now the policy blueprint for the second Trump administration?
Some people, if you take a look at the group, it was hundreds of people were involved. And I was actually, I reprimanded the whole group. I said, you shouldn't have placed this document in front of the voters because I have nothing to do with it and I'm the one that's running. You had no right to do this where you put a 1,000-page document in front. And many of those things I disagree with. Now, many of those things I happen to agree with. Many of those things Democrats should have agreed to. And I think they would have done much better in the election because they got slaughtered.
Well, I guess people see the list: Russ Vought, Brendan Carr, Peter Navarro, John Ratcliffe, Pete Hoekstra, Monica Crowley. And they think these are all of the people who were involved in or writing Project 2025. This must be a blueprint for work requirements, eliminating the Head Start program, criminalizing pornography. Is that what we can expect to see?
Well, I don't know how they voted. I don't know. I never spoke to them actually about it. And I purposely, and I told you, normally it would be just the opposite. I'd review every page. I purposely didn't even want to see it. Because when somebody like you asked me a question about Project 2025, I can honestly say I've never seen it. I have nothing to do with it. I didn't read it, but I did hear some things in there that I would totally disagree with. And I said to the people that were really the people behind it, you know who those people are? I said, you really had no right doing this to me because they used it as a soundbite, the Democrats. And I don't know, it couldn't have been too effective because they got slaughtered. But they did use it as a soundbite.
But to people who see, oh, he's bringing in all of these people from Project 2025, he must know what it is.
Well,
you say what?
I don't know what it is, no. I don't know what it is.
You still don't know what it is?
But I heard
All
certain
these people
things
are
that I
coming in
didn't
from
like.
your...
And by the way, I heard certain things that are phenomenal. Okay?
Like what?
Like law and order. We want law and order. Okay? Little things like, let's put prisoners in jail. Let's not let people come out and raid every drugstore in Manhattan so that we have to put glass up and every store is going out of business.
Let me ask you about something you've referenced a couple of times in this interview. I asked you last time we sat down for an interview if you were going to pardon yourself. You said no. But now that President Biden has pardoned his son, Hunter, are you reconsidering? Might you pardon yourself?
I didn't do anything wrong. I was given the option. And the lawyers told me, a very specific lawyer, I don't have to go into who, but very high up in the administration said, sir, if you pardon yourself, you're going to look guilty. And you did nothing wrong. Oh, I had that option. I could have saved myself a lot of legal fees. But it turned out that I was right. Look at what's gone on. Everything's being dropped. I still have a Fani Willis, a total hoax. That's a total hoax. It's all being dropped. It's all been discredited. It's been dropped. There are those people that say, and this would be the first time in history, that all of those fake indictments, they were going after a political opponent. There are those that say that I actually did better in the election because of it. Now, that would be a first. I think you would agree, because normally that's like, you go back to the microphones, you say, I'm leaving right now, I will leave office, I'm going back to my family, and I will fight for my name. Well, I had to fight for my name in public because I didn't leave office. But no, I didn't want to pardon, and I didn't want to pardon myself. I had the option to pardon myself.
And you don't want one now? You're not going to pardon yourself now?
What do I need one for? First of all, I've won almost all of the cases.
What if President Biden...
And the ones that I didn't win are on resuscitation.
What if President Biden offered you a pardon? Would you accept it?
I've never even thought about it. I don't think he'll do it. Look, if he did, he's the one that started this whole thing. He got the Justice Department to go after me. And the state cases are all being run by the Justice Department, which is illegal. They had their people from the Justice Department work for Alvin Bragg in order to get something going. They worked for Letitia James in the state. He had his people go from the federal government and take lesser jobs in the state in order to get Donald
And you know
Trump.
he denied.
There's no evidence that Biden played any role whatsoever in any of these convictions. None.